I've been trading London session for 8 years. I'm going to show you the best strategy to catch moves like these 8 a.m. every day. Really quickly before I start, I only enter using the strategy from 8 a.m., which is the start of London, until 12. That's British time, which is UTC +1. So just apply whatever time zone you are in to these numbers. So now let's get on to the first trade. To break this first trade down, I need to show you the 4-hour time frame. So what we did on 4-hour is that we had this very strong higher time frame support zone. In here, you can see it was created earlier on in the year. We've bounced down into it twice now and ended up rejecting. So in more detail, what happened is price was bearish, pushing to the downside, creating lower legs, pullbacks, then pushing down again until we tapped into that zone. And from that point, we then had that bounce there, and that bounce is so significant because it broke above that high point in there. So as soon as it broke above that, it said we were bullish. That's the first bullish leg of this new uptrend. This now, we're just looking for a pullback. Doesn't matter where to, it can be anywhere. As long as it doesn't break that low, it can be anywhere. So after we've seen that pullback, we're then looking for that next upper leg. So our only bias is bullish, and we're looking for that next upper leg that we've already had a pullback to at this point. And look, the pullback even went to that spot before we've started to reject. So the 4-hour is telling us we're looking for this next bullish leg, but we don't enter on the 4-hour. We enter on the lower time frames, and this is where London session comes in. So back over to the lower time frames, with this bias that we were looking for an upside, Asia actually gave us this pullback, which it so often does. Asia will often give us the pullback that we're looking for on the higher time frames on the 4-hour to then see the real move again that we look for in London. So the zone that we're looking at is a really simple one. The previous London session created this bank zone in the low down here, and it was also respected in Asia and became Asia low. So we've got previous London bank zone, Asia bank zone. So this is a very, very strong zone. So from this point, this is where London was starting. This was 8 a.m. So this is just before London opened, and it opened just in this zone. So if I saw rejection, I was buying to the upside. I'm now on the 5-minute, which is the entry time frame. So if I can see some sort of rejection candle, I will be able to enter from this point. And the first 5-minute of London does that. It's a close, it's a bullish close at this zone, indicating very start of London, we are starting to reject this zone and push off to the upside. And the point I was targeting was the Asia high bank zone. I'll just get this out in here. So I was targeting that point in there, and I was just going to let this play. We were in from the very first 5-minute of London session, and from this point, you just let it run, let it play out, let it run. I think I actually got out somewhere in there because there was news, and I usually close at the end of London anyway. So at that point I closed, but you can see it very easily ran to the 92 pip TP, 4.77 risk reward. So a higher time frame bias allowed us to find a lower time frame zone to take the buy from on the 5-minute. However, the next London session at 8 a.m. was different. In the next day, this wasn't one that I caught, but if you look over to the 4-hour, what you'll see is that we've had that bullish move, we've then had that pullback, we had that leg that we caught that pushed to the upside, and now there's been a pullback again. So you could be expecting another big move off to the upside. However, for me, I was looking at this 4-hour zone right here and seeing that we were rejecting it, so I wasn't even too interested. We were also rejecting the one there that we came below, so I wasn't interested in taking this. However, if you do, we still have that bullish bias, just the zones there preventing me from personally taking it, especially after that big win the day before. But what we had was the Asia bank zone down there, draw that across. So you can see Asia bottomed out, giving us this bank zone that we can always use in London. And from that point, what you'll see that happened is that price pushed down into it and then had a very, very strong move off to the upside exactly from that point that we would usually look for trades from. So some people may have caught that, but for me, I wasn't too interested because we had that 4-hour zone. But take this into account when I tell you the next trade. Towards the end, I'm going to talk about how the banks use these fake out pushes here, these downwards moves into our bank zones. We then look for the buys from them bank zones. As all these traders get stopped out in this point, we are catching this because of what the banks do at these zones. I'll show you that towards the end. So of course, this pushed the 4-hour up significantly going into the next few days. And very similarly to that last trade, 2 days later was the next trade, because this day in here was complete range day. There was no opportunities. We'll be wasting the time to show you that. 2 days later was this London session. So the next 5-minute that opened was 8 at London. So what would I be looking for? So I'll go over to the 4-hour now, and what you can see is just like on this day prior, what we had was a higher time frame zone up here that we had tapped into and shown rejections at. But again, we were bullish because we pushed up like that, pull back up again into that zone, pull back again, and that is where we currently found ourselves. So we were still bullish, looking for that next bullish leg. In here, I didn't take it at this 4-hour zone because I didn't really want to, and I was fine not doing that. However, at this zone, after seeing that, I then used that and said, I'm happy to take it, but I'm just going to reduce some risk, but still take this buy off to the upside because it works there, and it's going to do it again. Because we're so bullish, we even broke above all highs in there. So again, from the 4-hour, I said, okay, I'm good to look for buys going into the London session. What zones did we actually have to buy off? Well, first of all, we had this Asia low zone down here, Asia low bank zone. And what we also had from this day here, although we didn't trade it, it was so important because it gave us this London low, this London bank zone in here to go into the next day with. Now had valid lower time frame zones to be looking for these buys from to the upside. So this is just before London opens. What are we looking for? Well, as we always look for in London, we look for fake out drop down. People get stops out in here as they're chasing FOMO. We then look for it to tap into our bank zone. Then we look for the real move to the upside. It's what we've been doing this whole week in these trades. We're just looking for this again, either into that or into that down there so I can buy off. Now, what happens when the London market opens? Well, it pushes down, doesn't end up rejecting that zone, but it pushes all the way down and ends up rejecting this zone down here. That's a clear 5-minute rejection. So from that point, I took my buy with my stop just below the zone. You'll see the exact entries and TPs on the actual photos I show, but my target was again the Asia bank zone up there. And from that point, it was a 1 to 4.67 risk to reward. It was 78 pips. It came back down, tapped into the lows again before pushing off all the way up, easily hitting out the TP once again because we were looking for that 4-hour whip off to the upside. You can see I caught that bullish leg in there, just like we caught in there, and you possibly could have caught in there. Because we're looking for them bullish legs, we then see pullbacks, we look for bullish legs, we see pullbacks, we look for bullish legs. These are the points which we are trying to catch through the use of lower time frame zones. We actually use this exact 4-hour structure and this same lower time frame zone into the next day, so you must check this one out. Now the final trade just before 8 London session on this next day, after this one here, again we look at the 4-hour and what do we see? Well, last time we actually saw that the 4-hour, it did the pullback and it broke way above, a clear break above this point in here. So again, I took a bit of risk off the table because we were still around this zone, but because we did that break, I was thinking we're going to do the exact same thing as the day before. And we'd also started to create a 4-hour support zone, which just enforced the bias that we were looking for this next push off to the upside into these high points up here. This whole time we had a very bullish bias and we were catching all the bottoms as they pulled back before they made that next bullish leg. So on the lower time frame, what was the zone we were looking at? Well, very obviously the actual zone was just the previous day's London low and the day before. So 2 Londons in a row, they created this bank zone in here. So obviously, again, I'm just looking for the push in and then bounce as I always do. Here is where London opened and what did it do? Well, initially it pushed all the way down into the zone and here's where I was looking for the rejection. And in the next candle, we got that bullish candle, able to buy up from that point. Entry from there, stop just below the zone in there. And then target, I was just targeting this next swing high up here for a massive, massive risk reward. That's not where the stop was. For a massive risk reward of about 1 to 9, 1 to 10. And from that point, it did just push, 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 push. And then a few hours later, it had smashed all the way through that TP because I was able to see that at the start of London session, we get that manipulation where it's pushed down into a real zone. People get faked out in there. We then catch the real move. That's what I did on every one of these trades.